Welcome back to Mossbound Carnivores, and today, instead of the usual care guides, I will actually be showing how to repot, and I will be repotting this beautiful butterwort. I have been noticing some bites on it, so I do not fully trust the soil that it's in now, and I am hoping to try to clean it off as well. Check all the soil in case there was a pest, wash off the roots, and I have all the supplies that I need for it, including an extra pot so I can measure and mix. And I'm probably going to use that pot to store the excess peat moss that's in that one, actually. And I'm gonna use these two, perlite and peat moss, and I'm going to use this little bag. I actually need to take that plastic part out, but I'm going to use that bag to mix it up. So I'm going to walk you through the repotting process. This works especially good with plastic cups like this that specifically can be easily squished. And yeah, so for this repotting, I brought a lot, and by a lot I mean a lot of different items to help. So first off, what we're going to be repotting, the butterwort, known as a pinguicula, the Mexican butterwort. And so that's what we're repotting. I have a spare pot to store all that dirty peat that it may be infested with. I have a pretty big cup filled with distilled water, and that's to rinse off the roots. I have perlite. Set that over here. Rest it against this peat moss, which I should probably try to put more in the back so you can see it easier. Perlite, and lastly, this bag that I'm going to be using to mix the substrate. So, to set all this aside, what I will first be doing is first off, I'm going to try to carefully set all this aside so I don't spill anything. First, I will take this butterwort and I'm going to gently squeeze the sides to loosen up all that soil inside of it. And do not squeeze too hard, and so you don't end up ripping these butterwort leaves. They are very sensitive and can easily be pulled off. And if one or two of them get pulled off, that's fine. You just gotta remember to be careful with them. Like, I'm not putting that much pressure and squishing the whole pot. So now what I'm gonna want to do is try to gently pull the butterwort out. So grab both ends, and you can see that this is a decently old butterwort. It has a shallow root system, and it seems to have something in it. There was a twig in it. Never even seen that before. Camera messed up a little bit, but now what we're going to do is we're going to try to carefully remove that peat from the soil. And remember, carnivorous plants, they like to grow their roots straight down, and they don't like any nutrients in their soil at all. So just a little side note, you can tell that this is a decently old pinguicula. It looks like it's been well maintained in the past. Its roots do seem a little large for its size, and here's a semi-dead leaf. Yeah, you can easily pull them off, and it doesn't look that dead on camera, and it looks like I just harmed my pinguicula, but that is a dead leaf, albeit barely dead. So once you have carefully pulled off all peat in this, then here comes the part where the distilled water cup comes in. So now that you have most of the peat moss off, let me clear up the debris right here. Put this aside. you can bring over your cup, and what I'm gonna do is I'm going to grab this from the top and then just swish around the roots. Swish around the roots. It's okay if you get the top wet, but it's mainly just swishing around the roots inside of this cup. And what that will do is it will detach a lot of the peat moss. And this much distilled water, I prefer if you had a smaller cup than this. But if you're like me and you have a 0 water pitcher, then this is barely anything. So once I get all that peat moss off, a little bit more swishing around, you can also dunk it. It's another thing I'm gonna try. Once you get mostly all of it off, you will be left with this. So if I could carefully hold it from a side view, their roots are decently shallow and they grow straight down, just like how it's supposed to. So now that I have all this peat moss removed, I can set this cup aside, maybe water it later. But now what we're gonna want to do is we're gonna want to get the rest of that peat moss out of this pot. It's kind of dark, so you can't see it. And don't worry, I'm gonna be holding the pinguacula and periodically dunking it back in the water to rehydrate it every once in a while. Do not leave it in water. So I'm gonna quickly keep squishing up the sides, then forcing it down using this. I would be tapping the top, but there's no way I could do that because, I mean, I have this on the other hand. I could leave it off to the side, but I don't want to risk getting another insect in here. So after very gently, after shaking it off, I can also bring back the cup. I can bring back this beautiful drop it like it's sloth cup, and I can put this under the water and then wash out the peat moss just like I did with the roots. So keep washing it, keep washing it. I am not gonna cut over to my sink because I am still holding on to this, but instead I'm using this to wash it off, and plus it's already dirty water. Why make more water dirty? So once I get all this off, if you're sure there's a pest, you can also use a little bit of dish soap like Dawn, and you can just keep rinsing this pot off until it's all the peat is completely off and all of it's done with. So don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. This is, if you know anything about plants, then you should know that all plants can get very dirty very fast. So it's no surprise that your hands are gonna get dirty when you're repotting, especially since you're only dealing with plants and you're dealing with their roots specifically. So this is pretty well washed off after probably way too many dunks. So I'm just gonna shake all that excess water off, and you can't see it, but this has all been cleaned out from peat. So I'm actually going to go around and turn on a light to try to get more light over here so you can see. Yeah. Where's your phone? Right there. instead of repotting the paint.
You have to cut us out of your video.
I know. Oh, shoot.
Yeah?
So I left for a second to go turn on the outdoor light, but now you can see everything that makes up the Pinguicula in color. So this is its root system right here. This is the pot that I relentlessly dunked in this filthy water now. That is not going to get a high, I mean not a high, it's going to get a very high reading on the TDS. It's going to be a very low, it's not going to be the very low TDS reading that it should have been. And I'm just scraping all that extra dirty peat moss off to the side. So once we have all this done, don't worry, I'm still holding on to it. Now that we have all this out of the way, we can start using the actual peat moss and perlite. So for this, I am going to unfortunately have to sit this off to the side, and I will just sit it off camera, but it's in an area where I can easily see it and it's not going to be disturbed. And if anything tries to get on it, I can immediately spot it because it's right next to the camera. And I'm always making sure that people can see the stuff on the camera. So no need to worry. I'm gonna move this big cup of dirty water out of the way. So now I'm going to open my peat moss. I bought in a lot because, you know, I have a couple carnivorous plants. And I'm going to scoop up, I'm going to use 1 part peat, 1 part perlite. So I just scooped up a lot of peat. I'm going to be pressing it in. I'm going to be settling it down, making sure that it's only half of it. This is a very small pot, so it's not that hard to do. Although for people that are not used to this, it might be a little bit harder. And an alternative is 2 parts peat, 1 part perlite, 1 part silica sand. But you can exchange silica sand with perlite, so I'm using 1 part peat, 1 part perlite, which basically translates to half and half of both. So now this is filled with fresh peat, and you can't see the holes on the bottom anymore. So now I'm going to take my perlite and quickly hold my breath, because perlite dust is actually pretty dangerous for your lungs. So I'm going to stop talking for a second. Don't worry, I'm still alive. Okay, so all that is gone, and now you can see that it's filled with not silica. It's filled with the replacement for silica, which is perlite. And you might be thinking, oh, well, this isn't a mix. This is just the bottom part's peat and the top part's perlite. Well, that's where the bag comes in handy, because now that I have the right measurements for the pot, I can easily just have all of the peat come out of this moss, like the peat moss come out of the pot, and I can just mix it all up until they are both all mixed up. I guess I kind of ran out of words. Don't shame me for it. I'm going against you, Aiden. I know you watch these videos. And if you're also named Aiden and you don't know who I am, then it's not targeted towards you. It's targeted towards one of my friends, and I am directly mentioning him in this video right now. So just don't worry about it. Also you too, Jude. So this is a lot. It looks like a lot in the bag, but this is enough just to fill one of these tiny pots. Had to violently smack it. So now the pot's empty, and we have this Ziploc bag that has some peat and some perlite. So now you just swish around the bag, you know, kind of massage it, and you keep doing that until it is thoroughly mixed. So it may take a while. It doesn't take that long since this is a smaller pot, but it may take a while if you have different amounts than this tiny, I want to say 2 by 2 by 3 inch pot. And now that it's all thoroughly mixed, in there, I can open the Ziploc. I'm actually not going to open it all the way. I'm going to leave a lot of it closed so that it's easier to pour it. Now I'm going to get this cleaned out pot and pour the substrate back in. Then once all of it's in, or once most of it's in, I gotta pack it down with my thumb, then put the remaining substrate that was left behind back in. There's still some left behind, and it's because I gotta pack it in more. There's gonna be a lot of packing in, and trust me, no, you can do as much packing in as you can. It's not, as long as you water it right after, it's gonna pack in the whole substrate more. So now that I have all of this packed in this little cup, I can use my finger, and I'm going to measure just how much of my finger I should put down there. And it's actually better if I use my thumb, even though I'm not exactly a green thumb, with a couple plants that I'm not familiar with. But that does not include carnivorous plants. So once I make a little indent with my thumb, I am going to make sure that this does not tangle up on the way down. And it did not at all. It fit perfectly. And now I'm going to try to squish the edges in a way that will pack the peat moss. I've been saying pack a lot. It'll pack the peat moss back in. Now it's not bad to be slightly rough with these. It's just not good to be constantly rough with these. So now that it's back in a good pot, I'm actually gonna hold it from the top and shake it a little bit just to try to get it settled down. Now I'm actually gonna go bring out my 0 water pitcher. Now that I've come back with my 0 water pitcher, my phone didn't move that much, so I'm willing to bet that you didn't even notice it cut. Now I'm going to top water this. So I have my water right here. I'm going to top water it. It's very important you top water right after repotting anything. And it's always best to have drainage holes on the bottom. All carnivorous plants need drainage holes. So once all that settles through, if there's any excess water, like if you pour too much, you could just dump it out. But I didn't have that. Oh, okay. It's a little bit off camera, but it's starting to drip out. Hold on, a little piece of perlite's clogging one of the ways. Perlite's actually clogging in multiple ways. But yeah, now it's starting to have all the peat moss settle in, and it's actually best if you keep watering this until it starts to leak out on the bottom. And yes, you can water this a lot, and it won't really care as long as it has a drainage hole. So now that the substrate is actually wet, it should be holding the plant firmly now, because all that peat moss, when it was watered, it settled in around the butterwort. Now that butterwort is firmly inside that peat moss. So as of right now, we are complete. I'm a little bit far away because I'm kind of packing stuff up in the 0 pitcher. There we go. So now that I'm closer, I can actually explain this. Now that we have the actual repotting done, It just another reminder, it's always best to top water after you repot anything, because that'll help all the soil settle in. Now, bottom watering also works, but it doesn't work as much. So once you have all your repotting needs done, no matter what it may have been, just you needing to exchange the soil, pests, maybe fear, like what I was going through, fear of pests. Now you can start to pack up and put away everything that you used. So I'm having a little bit of a hard time with this peat moss because for some reason it just doesn't want to actually zip up. So just pack up everything. You can put it wherever. You can do a quick flip test, unless it's something that actually has acid like a Sarracenia or Nepenthes, Helianthora, Darlingtonia, anything like that. You don't need to flip it over. Cephalotus. But for stuff that is like a Drosera or Pinguicula, you can flip it over confidently, knowing that it's packed in. It's packed in. The roots are now securely in the peat moss. And yeah, so once you're done with everything, and I'm still checking everything to make sure that it's all sealed up, which it is. Now you've successfully repotted a Pinguicula, or whatever you decided to, hold on, there's a little bit of water on the leaf. Whatever you decided to repot, this will pretty much always work for any carnivorous plant except for the upside down part with the Sarracenia and all that. So now that you've repotted it, it should be in a nice new home. It'll eventually start to grow in and get used to your soil between 2 days and a week. And I know that sounds like a while, but 2 days in a week, 2 days to a week, it will start actually clinging to the soil. And then once that happens, well, it's all settled in its new home. It's hopefully gonna catch some bugs, have a nice meal after that. Just remember, repotting is mainly for if it's getting root bound, if it's just overgrowing its pot, if there's pests, if you just need to just to refresh all the substrate. No matter what, repotting is a very important thing to do, and it really depends on when you need to do it. You cannot just go and repot it anytime. It's always, if you need to repot it, it's always best to repot it when you need to water it, because as I just showed you, you need water to settle down the peat. Doesn't matter how much you pack it down. You could be a bodybuilder. No matter what, if you put water over that packed down substrate, it will always settle down lower. That is a fact. So now I can look at this Pinguicula knowing that I repotted it and potentially saved it from a pest. So this is my repotted Pinguicula. This was Mossbound Carnivores. Good morning, good night, good afternoon, wherever you may be, and have a nice day.